Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Executive Table Talk. I'm JT O'Donnell, founder and CEO of Work It Daily. And today we're going to be talking to an incredible group of executives about podcasts, specifically the podcasts that they think are most impactful and ones that you should listen to. And I'm really excited to dive into this. I love podcasts. I'm a podcast addict. I can tell you that with all honesty. So let's bring them all up here because they've each come with some pretty insightful podcasts to discuss. Hello, execs. How are y'all doing today?
Hello.
Good to see
How
you
are
all.
you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining in and for sharing your podcast recommendations. I know that at this time, the time that we're recording this, it's kind of mind-blowing. There's literally millions of podcasts out there. There's endless amount of content that we can listen to. And I think sifting through and finding the right content can be a challenge, And so talking today about content, specifically podcasts that help you with your professionalism, help you grow as a professional. All of you are very successful in your background. So I'm really excited to hear what you have. And I'm going to go clockwise here on the screen. So I'm going to pick on you first, Michael. What podcast is one that you think we should be listening to?
Well, thank you, JT. I appreciate the question. The podcast today is a great topic for me because I left working with the podcast. Young lady's name is Kelly Merbler, Merbler, Kelly Merbler. Her podcast is called Coffee with Kelly. It's on every Friday. She's on from 8 to 9. I know it's very early in the morning, but from 8 to 9. And occasionally she'll have a meeting at 11:30 for the cover the West Coast folks sometimes to accommodate them. But it's been going on. She started this podcast about 3 years ago with five women it was during right in the beginning of COVID, just to stay in touch, just to have some kind of communication. And by trade, Kelly is a lead development consultant. She's a keynote speaker. She's an executive coach, strength finder. She's very dynamic, very inclusive. Now, as of right now, the podcast is up to about 80 people, men and women. So it first started out with 5 women. Now it's up to about 80 men and women from several different countries. She has a Slack channel that tracks the podcast, job boards, past and upcoming events. It's just, and I'm not really sure how I met her. I believe I met her. I can't really remember. But both our moms have passed away from Alzheimer's. And every Christmas she goes back to the nursing home where her mom was. And she has it's called the Senior Significant Project. And it's about giving back. And she goes there and she brings smiles, and she brings a little camera crew, and she brings smiles to the people that are there with suffering from Alzheimer's. And it's just a beautiful time. And I really enjoy her podcasts are great. She has a lot of energy, and I just love it. And I really appreciate having an opportunity to talk about her today because I think she's a really special person. Thank you.
I like that because I think just the name of it, Coffee with Kelly, obviously you can tell that it's very conversational, kind of thing that you can listen to while you're having your own coffee.
Yes.
And that sounds great. And I love that she grew it through the pandemic. There's a lot of people out there that have, big names that, they launch these podcasts and of course they're immediate hit, but to hear somebody start from scratch like that and grow that out of passion is wonderful. So thank you for that recommendation. It sounds awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we're bouncing over to you, Percy. What's your favorite podcast these days that people should know about?
Well, I listen to several different podcasts for different categories. Obviously, for filmmaking, obviously it's Quentin Tarantino's podcast. There's a lot of horror podcasts that I also listen to. This is what I do when I'm driving. But I believe as a creator, especially if you're a YouTube creator or other creator, one of the absolute best podcasts that's out there is from Think Media Podcast. And that's run by Sean Cannell. I've met him a couple times at VidCon. He is a YouTube creator. He focuses on digital marketing. His emphasis obviously is YouTube, but it's also social networking. It's podcasting. It's email networking as well. And it's been an incredibly valuable resource for me for building my YouTube channel. Now, as far as YouTube recently decided to, because everyone's doing short form content, you have TikTok, you have Instagram, you have YouTube Shorts. But recently, YouTube decided to, we're going to put a lot of focus on podcasting because that's a really small market. And we realized that we're bigger than Spotify. So they're focusing on podcasting recently, and they send out a 60-page, I'm looking at it right now, 67-page PDF on what you need to have to actually have a very successful podcast. So when you go to Think Media, he has all this information. So he's constantly talking about, okay, this is what you need to do to create a fantastic YouTube channel that has like everything you need to get the fans, the community to come to your channel, to grow your community, but also on podcasting as well. So it's an incredible, valuable tool, especially if you're a creator. And a lot of this can also translate to, to TikTok, to Instagram, and others, as well as Snapchat. So growing, it's been fantastic just listening to that. And I listen to that usually. He has, I think, every podcast almost every day or every other day, but it's always available resource on just little things on what's trending, what's working, what's not working, how to pivot your channel. A lot of times he has guests. Also, he has guests who've actually, been successful as an entrepreneur, as a podcaster, or as a YouTube content creator as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't think I realized that. Well, first of all, Think Media sounds like a great podcast. I don't think I realized that, people were thinking about using YouTube as a podcast platform, but it totally makes sense, right? It's two for the price of one. You can do the visual and the audio. There's a lot there. So also sounds like he's got a lot of variety in what he does day to day. But I just have to say this, Percy, you're a very humble individual. I'm going to call you out here. Tell everybody, how many views have your YouTube channel videos gotten total?
So my views have gotten 17 million views, around 22,000 subscribers. A couple of videos went viral, and it led to a lot of working with a lot of major brands, renowned brands like Disney, 20th Century Studios, and more. And, I've worked on sponsored videos, creating sponsored videos for them.
Yeah, so that's exactly why I'm telling people this is a pretty solid podcast recommendation. If somebody who's had 17 million views, you definitely are knowledgeable in the space to begin with. So if you're learning something from this podcast, it sounds super valuable. I love it. Okay, moving down to John Shimbari. John, you're in the educator space. I'm curious to hear what your favorite podcast recommendation is.
Yeah, definitely. So hard to follow Percy, but I'll give it a go. So in my space of education, there's one that many of us educators go to, and that's Cult of Pedagogy, but with Jennifer Gonzalez, because it really looks at all aspects of curriculum, instruction, and assessment, which are, areas that every teacher and every school administrator deals with. So for those educators out there listening to this, you can't go wrong with that niche podcast. Now, in terms of general public podcasts, I'm a big fan of podcasts on books. So if I'm on the treadmill or, on a walk, I love the New York Times Book Review podcast, the Guardian podcast, because I just find that listening to those podcasts about books, even if I don't get to the book, it gives me, a well-rounded persona, so to speak. And, whether you're an educator, talking to people, or a marketer, I do think it is good to just show your general knowledge of topics of the day. And then again, you never know in those book podcasts when those leadership tips are going to come out or that are cross-discipline. So I would say Cult of Pedagogy in my field. I do a lot of other people's podcasts. I'd also say Leading Teaching Learning with Steve Miletto. Again, for those of you out there who are interested in increasing your knowledge and your gravitas, always great to go on a podcast as well as a guest. But those are the ones I listen to as an educator, and like I said, I'm a big fan of those book podcasts. And you can't go wrong. I mean, many of these podcasts are also shows or radio shows on NPR. Obviously, I love Terry Gross and Fresh Air, and again, you can't go wrong. It's just there's a cornucopia of great resources out there just to increase our knowledge as lifelong learners.
I totally agree with you. And I do love listening to book podcasts as well, because I don't have time to sit and read. I also like to be moving. I know that sounds silly, but I like to be able to throw on a set of headsets and walk around and listen to the podcast as opposed to sitting. I sit at my desk all day. So when it comes to podcasts, I actually like to move. And speaking of moving over, wasn't that a lovely segue, folks? Let's talk to Georgia. Georgia, I am so excited to hear what your podcast recommendation is today.
Well, I appreciate this. as I'm listening to everybody right now, I'm writing this stuff down. Some of these are just amazing. I can't wait to tap into them. But I'm a big YouTube and podcast person myself. My background is actually in recruitment, and also I'm a big organizational junkie, being someone who was a manager back in the day at a university. And so for me, for anybody who's out there looking at how to acquire, attract talent and or retain talent, Revolutionizing Recruitment would be a podcast I would tap into for sure. It's really talks about the art of attracting talent, acquiring and retaining them. And what I love about this particular podcast is that, first of all, it's brief enough to get the morsels of value you're looking for. And as you know, post COVID, if you are a leader of any organization, manager or otherwise, you're looking for tools and tips. And sometimes it's the only place to be in a management position. And you're looking for resources. And if you don't have access to an advisor or a coach, this is a one-stop shop for you to listen to people like Marcus Buckingham. So the guests are Marcus Buckingham and we had, it's Christy Pamabiachi from, she's the Chief People Officer at Intel. So there's a variety of leaders talking about their tips and tricks, what's working, how they've evolved and possibly failed in some of the things that they've attempted to do with the people in their organization. And for me, that's very valuable, being a manager myself, just to have those one-stop, learning techniques. And also, Marcus Buckingham, for example, talked about love and work. Right now, people have choices. They don't have to work just anywhere. So when you find the place that you're going to rest, how do you make it something you love? And so that's, for me, there's a personal growth to that, personal and professional growth. So that's just something I've tapped into. And then, of course, there's a lot of other types of podcasts that I'm interested in. But I think for me, and given my personal and professional growth, that's one that I would definitely recommend.
Well, and I love what you talked about, because you talked about the structure of the podcast, that, they're bringing in people that, back in the day, you'd go see at an event, right? You'd go see that individual speak. It'd be amazing to be able to actually chat with them. And so I think that's one of the amazing parts of a podcast like Revolutionizing Recruitment, is that you feel like you're in the room with that individual, and, you're getting your own questions answered, which I love. And again, it's really strong. They're bringing on incredible quality guests. As somebody who's in the space as well, I agree with you. I think they're doing an unbelievable job for sure. Love it. Okay. And last but not least, we joke all the time, Mark, you're a regular, so I know that you're okay with this. But we always love to round it out with you and your advice. And I'm excited because you never come with a boring answer. So lay it on me, my friend. What podcast are we presenting today?
Yeah, well, so just a little bit of background, JT, right? So just as a general tenet, I guess I've developed over the years, whether it's at work or outside of work, is this idea of something being fit for purpose, right? So whether it's building a team or building a process or putting reports together, is it fit for purpose? So I'm always on the lookout for, easy to implement tricks, techniques, call them what you will, that you can kind of add to those things and to make them more fit for purpose. So I'm always on the lookout for that. And one of the many things that I've come across is this guy called Brian Johnson. So from what I can gather with Brian, one of the key things that he's done is he sat down and I think it's over 500. I think it's heading to 1,000. He's gone through, and I don't like the term, but it kind of works here. He's gone through nearly 1,000 self-help books, and he has put together what he calls philosopher's notes. So something you can read within 5 or 10 minutes that kind of gives you the essence of the book. And based upon the work that he's done there, he's also put together what he calls plus ones, which is where the podcast piece comes in. So every day there is a 90-second, 2-minute, 3-minute plus one that, based upon the work that he's done, he'll kind of throw these ideas out there. And it might be new ideas, or it might be ideas that idea one comes out on the Monday, and then idea 1B comes out on the Tuesday, and over the week he'll kind of add to what he's talking about. So like I said, I just find those really helpful, not least because the amount of work that he's put in. And the one thing that I'm finding with these things is the techniques, the things that he calls out, I guess because he's done so much and he seems to be so clever at actually, synthesizing things. He's actually put together his own philosophy, and it's based upon ancient kind of philosophical wisdom, Greek philosophy, Chinese, etc. But then he's also looked at kind of modern day research, positive psychology, that kind of thing, and kind of blended it all together with this idea that you flourish through living your virtues, which isn't easy, right? You've got to do it on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute, moment-to-moment basis. But that's kind of where it goes. So if you just want to dip in and get a few quick techniques, it's a perfect place to do it. But if you want to go a lot deeper, then again, I find it great, really helpful.
I love it. It's like the Cliff Notes, right?
Yeah.
For self-help books. Like what a smart way to focus too. And I'd never heard of them. In fact, aside from Georgia and I being in the same space, which is the only reason that I know about her podcast that she's mentioning, I didn't know about any of the other podcasts that were listed here today. And that was the whole point of this exercise, folks. So that being said, before we go forward, we've got a little time here to take questions. So if our audience has any questions today for our amazing executive crew, now's the time to pop them in the chat. While I'm doing that, I want to remind you that you can find and follow each and every one of these executives here on LinkedIn. And they are all LinkedIn creators, meaning they are sharing content. They're creating and curating really great advice and putting it in their LinkedIn feeds, right? So if you really want to learn from subject matter experts, these are the folks that you can go find and follow. Please promise me, though, if you reach out to connect with them, which you should, tell them that you saw them on Executive Table Talk. That way they know. So customize the connection request and say, hey, I saw you on ETT. Can we connect? That way they know who you are and why you're connecting. All right. So just a little reminder there. And one question from Kenji is it Brian Johnson, Brian, or Bryan? Do we know, Mark?
Yeah, I do. It's Brian.
Okay.
So if you want to look at his website, so www.heroic.us, that's a good place to start.
Heroic.us. Okay, great. Yeah, and I think what's neat is, so these days podcasts are just an extension of people that are offering a lot of incredible resources. You can go down the rabbit hole with people's resources once you get there, which is great. I love it. I love it. Well, while we're waiting for questions, like I said, I'm going to hold you all for a little bit longer here because those were great recommendations. I want to ask you all, when it comes to spending time on professional development, right? Be honest with yourself. I'm going to give you a second to think about it. How much time a week do you think you spend working on professional development? And that could be listening to podcasts, reading articles, industry related stuff. Maybe you subscribe to newsletters. I'd be really curious to see what you think. And do you do it on a daily basis? Do you set time aside one day a week? I'd just love to hear how you structure it and how much time you're spending. So I'm going to reverse order it here. I'm going to come back to you, Mark, and just say, off the top of your head, how many hours do you think and how do you structure that?
You know what, JT, I would say maybe an hour a day.
Nice.
I'd always say at work, I'd always say I've got an open door policy, even though at times my door was closed and I turned the lights off in my office because for some reason I seem to be able to concentrate better when the lights are off. And I would spend it kind of goes back to what I was just been talking about. Here's a new process that I've inherited. Not quite sure what it does. I'll work that out, right? And part of working it out is then I'll do a Google search. I'll think it looks similar to X that I've done before, so I'll search for that. And you start to get a toe in with certain things, and then I've got any number of these really any number. I might have 50 or 60 of these Moleskine notebooks that have got any number of, kind of scribbles of a madman as I'm trying to kind of work things out. And sometimes, again, that might be process-based, something that I've got to solve right now from a work perspective. It's Wednesday and this needs to be done by Friday. I'm not quite sure how to do it yet, but there'll be any number of scribblings in there as well, as where I'm kind of trying to take a step back and look at kind of where I am in that bigger picture. Again, whether that be from a work perspective or, to be honest, from a life perspective. And that to me, I always used to find the time, JT, right? I was never that person that would answer every email, right? And part of it as well would be I need the time to refresh, to be able to then go again. And part of that refreshment is to take that step back and just kind of get a sense as to where you're at, what needs to be done next.
Totally love it. Yeah, I agree. An hour a day seems that's probably where I am for sure. Georgia, what about you?
You know, I would have to say an hour to 2 hours. When I consider what I go out and I look for, Mark, you made mention of fit for purpose. It's really important to have access to tools, and with the technology, there's so much information out there. So for me, when I'm struggling and I need specific information, like for now, like right now, marketing is an element of my job, and I'm not a marketer, but so to go out and find useful tools quickly to at least be able to speak articulately about what I'm doing and what I'm looking to achieve on my job, because we're evolving, and I don't think any job description stays the same. I mean, I think it goes out of, it's not the same after 6 months anymore. It's constantly evolving. So for me, it's far more than, it's probably at least 2 hours. And on the weekend, it's crazy time because I really enjoy the conversations out there in the public venue, so that's what I'm doing. I don't know that it's adding, I don't know if I'm really getting anything done as a result of it, but I do think that, it's helping me a lot progress on my job. So I have to say, I guess I am.
I am with you 100%. That was a profound statement that jobs are changing after 6 months. They are. They're changing so fast. And so not carve that time out in order to stay up to date, right? That's absolutely key.
Absolutely.
I love it. John, what about you? Because you're a busy guy. How much time do you devote to it per week? No pressure.
So I spend about 2 or 3 hours on my professional development, but that's because I'm killing two birds with one stone, if you will. So as an education consultant, I'm always posting on LinkedIn. And some of that content is my own thoughts and from what I'm doing in schools. And some of it is what others in the field are talking about, right? So in doing that on a weekly basis, I think that has actually helped me really increase my ability to learn about what is trending in my field, what others feel about some of the issues I feel passionately about. So I have a list of, say, 10 publications that I usually have right by me when I'm crafting my content. And, again, just by doing that writing consistently on topics of interest in my field and accessing those different periodicals and journals and books, like I said, it's really helped me to learn just as much, if not more, from others what I'm also putting out there in the education universe, if that makes any kind of sense.
It does. And, you hear the old phrase, the best way to learn something is to teach it. And I'm really excited that you talked about that, because if we're taking the time to listen to podcasts, to read, to learn, which we all as executives know has to happen consistently, right? You're revealing that in these answers. To then take it a step further and say, how can I turn around and translate that and share it in my feed and with others, right? Serve my network, teach others. What a powerful way to actually take and apply what you're learning, right? And I think when you see executives doing that, that's one of the reasons they have a competitive edge, because people like you are actually going out there and pushing that information out after learning it from someplace else. And for any of you listening right now, nobody's holding you back. Every single person can do that. You have a platform in LinkedIn where you could be taking this valuable professional knowledge that you're gaining every day through these channels and pushing it out. So John, I loved that you shared that. I think it's huge.
All right. One very quick thing. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, JT, and I have found that the content that resonates the most is actually, yes, my own thoughts on things, but being able to validate the work that others are doing validates me and my work as well. So don't think that we're in this alone. We're all in this boat of professionalism together.
Totally agree. Great comment. All right, jumping to you, Percy. How often are you dealing with professional development? Because you're so busy with video and production.
Right, pretty much almost every day. Usually when I'm going to work, I'll listen to something that's either happening on like either YouTube or TikTok, I'll listen to obviously Think Media, vidIQ is a great one as well. Just the latest information on what's trending. Sundays I'll listen to ALUX, which also really helps me kind of motivate myself for the the following week, and just learn about other leaders and so on. What are their best practices to be successful? But I remember it was last year. I remember that it was your YouTube channel, JT's Work It Daily, which I learned so much from. Just about personal branding, about you're your own boss. And I would listen to like your YouTube channel, just like actual a podcast, and actually it helped me grow professionally by probably more than I think I've grown listening to your YouTube channel more than I've grown in 1 year more than I would have grown without your channel. It would have taken me 4 or 5 years. So that's absolutely been fantastic growth for me. But usually about 3 to 4 hours per week that I'll spend time on learning new stuff.
I love that. And I think in your line of work where you're doing video and there's just so much to process, the fact that you're carving that much time out as well to do that is huge. And I love that you brought up that there's something specific I listen to on Sundays that motivates me. And of course, thank you for mentioning Work It Daily. I'm actually going to go find that 67-page document you just talked about, because we've dabbled in podcasting for a while and want to do one, but it sounds like the right place to do it is on YouTube now going forward. So right. I'm always learning from you every time you're on the show, Percy, which is great.
Thanks.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Michael, how many hours a week are you spending on professional development? Tell us why.
Well, when I first joined Work It Daily, I noticed that you didn't have anything scheduled on certain days. Like Monday, you said people are just coming back. So that's kind of what I do. I don't schedule because you have too much noise. So I don't schedule some things like on Mondays. And so 2 days a week, I try not to have any podcasts going on, any Zoom meetings or any other kind of meetings. So I take 2 days a week, and I don't spend all day, of course, but I'll spend 3 hours those 2 days a week, 3 hours one day, 3 hours, just working on developmental type stuff. But I do try to take certain days of the week to just focus on one thing, which is just working on myself. Not that you're not working, it's just that you don't have any meetings set up.
Yeah. I actually love that you mentioned that, because for some of us, it might be an hour a day and it's when we're having our coffee. For others, we might want that larger block of time, and to give ourselves that time, I think, is a wonderful takeaway, which is schedule into your life this kind of professional development, whether it's listening to podcasts, folks, reading articles, whatever you're doing. You heard every single one of these executives today talk about it's a habit. They work it daily, just like the name of my company, right? Our company, it's just that's what it's about. So please make sure that you are taking this in and doing this, because if you want to reach the level that these executives are at, these are the best practices. These are the way to do it. So thank you, everyone. This was great. I'm really glad we got to hear about podcasts. They were great recommendations. Also love to hear about your time structure. Wonderful as always. Folks, one more quick reminder, jot their names down right now. These executives are all on LinkedIn, dropping knowledge bombs inside their LinkedIn feeds. Head on over, follow them. Better yet, send them a custom invite, connection request, and say, I saw you on ETT. That way they know that you're watching and you're paying attention, okay? And until next time, remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily. So we'll see you back here next week for sure, okay? Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.